So I'm really excited to talk with Steve. Intel has been doing a bunch of things in the wearable space, starting at CES and then most recently at our code conference last week. Why is this area of interest to Intel, other than the fact it kind of missed smartphones and tablets and it's trying to get back into things? I'm nice.
Well, that's a great question. Thank you. First of all, I wouldn't say I've given up on smartphones and tablets. I think Intel is making great advances, and I think in the near future we'll see a lot of companies recognize the advantages of Intel's process capabilities and the performance of our smartphone and tablet SoCs. So, it's okay to start slow if you finish in the first place. But as far as the wearable space, I think there's a couple things that are coming together right now. One is, we do want to demonstrate leadership in Internet of Things, and wearables really are a subset of Internet of Things. The Internet of Things that you wear on your body. And we believe that Intel has a tremendous amount to bring to this space. It's not just the things that you wear on your body. It's also all the things that you do with the information on the back end. How you take this information you're gathering from these devices or supplying to these devices and get insights and value out of it. So Intel is very uniquely positioned to do that with our position in the data center, with our incredible software resources, big data analysis. There's a lot we can do. I think the other thing I would just say is that wearables, they're not a monolithic class of product, right? There's certainly things like the Fuel Band and the Basis Watch, which don't require a tremendous amount of compute capability. But there's also things like Oculus Rift, where it really requires a full capability of a core processor from Intel. And in that space, I expect Intel will dominate.
So when we talk about wearables, I think it's fair to say that none of us know exactly what's going to be the hit and where these are going to take off. But Intel's sort of demonstrated a few different areas. Can you talk about which of the areas of the body, if you will, that Intel sees as particularly promising, and why you guys are choosing to make some of the early bets that you guys have made?
Absolutely. I think Brian Kersanich, our CEO, has talked a little bit about the wrist as being a critical area, and I think another number of companies recognize that based on the long history of watches and other things worn on the wrist. But also the eyes and ears. Really, wearables in a lot of ways are opportunity for input and output, right? It's a way to present data to people that they couldn't otherwise see in a very seamless way, or to get information from them that you can then use to give them insights or value. So I think there's watches, there's ears and eyes, there's also the garments that you wear on your body. And in fact, I think we'll see a lot more progress in that space. We just recently announced at Intel the Smart Shirt, which measures EKG, and from that EKG information, you can actually get insights about people's health. You can get insights about their mood or their stress level. There's a lot of value you can get out of that information.
So let's take some of these parts of the body one by one. The wrist is a natural place to start because I think it's where everyone's focused the most time broadly. At the same time, there's a million devices I could wear on my wrist, and as you see, I'm not wearing any of them at the moment. Is there a sense of what the right mainstream thing is to go on the wrist? Do we know what it is and we're just not there yet from a technology perspective, or do we not yet even know what would really be a hit?
Yeah, I think that there's still a lot of exploration going on, certainly. And I think that the amount of utility that people are bringing to these products really hasn't crossed the threshold of the amount of friction that the products bring into people's lives, right? So if I have a smartwatch and I have to charge it every day, even if it's valuable, that's another thing I have to manage. And if it requires a specialized charger and I need to keep track of that, at some point it's easier just not to maintain that thing because I have other ways to get the information. To me, for these things to really be successful, they need to actually provide unique value. So I talk about intimacy, persistence, and immediacy as some of the things that are going to be necessary for a wearable to really stand above the other kinds of products that you can currently get.
And does Intel have a thought in terms of whether, leaving aside the fitness bands for a second, but kind of the smartwatch category, whether the more likely to be popular device will be a complement to the smartphone or pack sort of all the communications and intelligence of a smartphone? Because we've seen devices at every end of the spectrum.
Mm-hmm. That's true, and I think that there's actually a place for both. Right now, the amount of power that it takes to run a cellular radio is pretty significant, and having a wearable device that incorporates one definitely limits the battery life and some of the other functionality. So I think that we will see for some devices, like an example might be a security watch, where I want to actually make sure that I know where my child is all day. It just makes sense to have a cellular radio inside the wearable. For other applications right now, it makes sense to piggyback on the connectivity you already have. And some of that's also driven by business requirements as well, right? Where I don't want to maintain a whole lot of different cellular radios and the cost of maintaining those through the carriers.
Obviously, it's still super early in this space, but you showed a few products at CES. Mm-hmm. You've been thinking about this for a while. Are there some insights that already you think you guys have gotten that you think others that are thinking about wearables in terms of fruitful areas to pursue, not so fruitful areas to pursue? I think one of the things that we don't have right now is a lot of dialogue in the industry. Everyone's got their own idea and they're kind of off running on it, which is great. If you go to the demo area, there's a million cool ideas, but I'm not sure we're all sort of sharing intelligence on what's working and what's not. I'm curious if you have any thoughts that would benefit everyone here.
Absolutely. I think, first of all, as Intel, we're very lucky because we provide technology to a lot of different companies, and we really are trying to push the whole industry forward. We don't have a particular product we're bringing to market as an Intel brand. So we get exposed to a lot of the ideas out there, and I think some of the things that we're seeing that really are important to people is, first of all, that these devices should be something that you're pleased to wear on your body, that says something about you that you think...
I mean, right now, I think if you're wearing it, it says something about you.
I guess that's true.
But maybe not the thing you want to say. So fashion is important.
Absolutely. So,
and Intel made an interesting choice. You guys decided not to tap the deep in-house fashion talent from within Intel, but you're partnering?
That's exactly right. It's a little-known fact that we have. If you go to the Intel Museum, you can see many very nice polo shirts with Intel on the chest. Which is our main foray into fashion, and bunny suits, I guess. But no, we've decided to partner with the fashion industry because these are companies that have been spending years and years really understanding their user, understanding what people are not just will wear on their bodies, but desire to wear on their bodies. And I think this is one of the keys to wearables, even the ones that are maybe not intended to be on your wrist or visible to the world. I think we still want the things that we wear close to our bodies to fit us well and to be attractive and to be appropriate for wearing.
And I do think people underestimate, in the tech industry, we're not very good at this, we underestimate the importance of it. And phones are tremendously personal devices. People put cases, they do all sorts of things to make them personal and fashionable, and we still put them in our pockets. Wearables, by definition, are going to be things that are on us. Is the tech industry capable of this challenge? Can we do this as an industry?
I think so, but I really do think it is important to partner with companies that are really aware of what it takes to create a meaningful wearable product. And by that I mean the clothing and jewelry and things that people wear every day. So, a good example is just talking to people in the fashion industry, you start to understand that they have as much effort and energy into understanding their user as we do when we design a product, whether it's a software product or a hardware product. They think about personas and what does their person want to do every day and how do they spend their life, and also how do they use these products. It's a very rare person who wears the same shirt every day or the same bracelet every day. There's a whole different mindset, I think, that comes with the approach that the fashion industry takes to their customer, and we're now bridging that customer to the technology customer, who's often much more focused on utility than on appearance.
Yeah, I think I read something in my inbox today that Diane von Furstenberg is working with Google Glass, and I can't wait to hear some of those conversations. But I think you're right. It'll be I think, first of all, I think those conversations will be fascinating. And I do think there's going to be some culture clash, but sort of what comes out of it could be really interesting. I don't know, have you guys, have those conversations with your partners gotten to the level that you're getting some of those interesting insights?
Absolutely. And I think actually, to me, this is as much about us getting educated as about educating the fashion industry about what's possible and what some of the constraints are around the technology and where the technology is going. Because I think we are still very nascent. We're exploring a bunch of things. There's some great ideas out there. There are some ideas that will hopefully lead to great ideas out there. But I think that the more that we can make the technology accessible to people and for people to get value out of it quickly, the better off we're going to be.
The other thing I think people underestimate is, and you brought this up, is the charging aspect. Battery life. You can have a great product, and if it doesn't give you the battery life you want, and or it requires a separate charger, all these things are really barriers to adoption. One of the things you guys showed at CES that I thought was really interesting was this kind of artsy bowl. It looks like those things that you get as a wedding gift that you didn't register for. But unlike those, it actually does something you want. Talk about the idea there and why it matters.
Yeah, I think that, I think about the fact that if I'm going to start bringing more devices into my life, they need to add a lot of value, but they also need to be something that I can manage easily. And certainly the idea behind the charging bowl was, okay, just imagine a world where you and I have 5 or 6 wearables on our body, and we get home, and now I need 5 or 6 plugs, and I need to plug them in, and maybe some of them have custom charging cables. I need to find those. Quickly this goes from being an asset to my life to being a deficit. So the idea is if there's just something we could do to complement the behavior that we already have. When I get home, I take everything out of my pocket, I put it in the exact same place, which happens to be a bowl on my counter. And then I know when I leave the next morning, I know where my car keys are, I know where my wallet is, I know where all the things, my watch, I can find all those things. Now, if those things are all smart, then I also would like to find them and have them charged. So I think the more we can do to complement the behaviors that people already have and remove the burden of managing more devices, the better off we're going to be, and the faster we're going to see wearables adopted. Same sort of thing around the problem of pairing things and connectivity. You asked about smartphones and whether wearables are going to be accessory to smartphones or separate. And I think it really depends. I mean, ideally, I take my wearable out of my product and I put it on my wrist, and it brings value right away. I don't spend the next half hour trying to pair it and trying to figure out why I don't have a firmware download. I mean, the more we can eliminate those barriers, and there's ways to do it through technology, and there's ways to do it through the retail experience. I think the faster people will adopt these products, and the less they're going to be disappointed when they realize that their journey has just begun after they've purchased it.
And yet, most of the products today require the kind of setup you do. And the next hurdle I see is, even if the next generation is compelling, I think they're likely to come from existing players who are tied to their own ecosystem. So if Apple does its watch, we know Samsung's doing a watch, Google's talked about Android Wear. Each of these are pretty tied to their own ecosystems. That also seems to be a place of friction. I mean, maybe it's fine. Maybe if I'm, especially on the Apple side, they tend to be really good at getting people to buy the next thing in their ecosystem. But, it does seem that these things are tied to a specific brand. Is that a good thing? Is it a problem?
I think that we're going to see, we're going to test that theory because wearables, I believe, are more personal in a lot of ways than some of the previous devices that we've had in our lives, like a PC or a tablet or a phone. I mean, if I'm wearing a wearable on my wrist, it may be that the particular fashion of one manufacturer or the other isn't going to fit with kind of who I am and what I want to express about myself, or even the particular set of features that they've selected aren't going to be the ones that matter to me. So I think the ability to build silos is going to be challenged in terms of unless you really find that magic combination of features. It's either a superset or is something that only you have that no one can live without. I think we're gonna see a much more open ecosystem than we have in the past.
So I started off with an Intel-related dig, but I kind of want to get back to this topic because it came up at our code conference. So you had Microsoft, BlackBerry, and Intel, 3 companies that I think it's fair to say have struggled in the shift from computing of the past to phones and tablets, all talking about the Internet of Things as the next big thing. But my sense is that the mobile winners, the Apples and Qualcomms and Samsungs of the world, also see the Internet of Things and wearables as the next big thing. How are the companies that are maybe a step or two behind or challengers in mobile, why are they better positioned to be the leaders? And feel free to take it. I imagine you know more about Intel's efforts than BlackBerry's or Microsoft's.
Yeah, I can't tell you, and shouldn't comment anyway on too much on their efforts. But I think that for Intel, we bring a lot of assets to the table. Intel actually has leading process technology, and I think what that leads to is more computing power for less power. And that's going to be really critical in this space. I think we see that. I think we've learned a lot of the things that we wish we'd done a little differently in the mobile space, and we're applying those lessons to wearables and Internet of Things. I think Intel brings some fantastic assets in terms of software capability, the cloud services capability, the ability to generate software that makes these experiences, products meaningful. I mean, I think we've crossed over to the point where SoCs are certainly, and silicon is certainly going to be an important part of wearable products. And as I mentioned, there's a broad range of wearables. So some of them, you can't imagine them being functional without an incredibly capable processor. And then I think in Intel's case, we're well positioned to provide that. But in other ones, the processor really doesn't matter so much, and it's really more about the experience and about what you do with the data that you've collected. And in that case, I think Intel is actually much better positioned than many of the companies to provide that as a capability to partners who have a great idea.
And you mentioned this range of intelligence in the devices. I mean, to be a little concerned, I know we're at a wearable conference, but isn't there an argument to be made that we have with our phones a huge chunk of computing power, and really developing an ecosystem of sensors and small things around is really what's more needed than another computer on our body. How much do you think of and let's go a little bit even beyond wearables and include sensors that are around us, how much of that intelligence is just going to be around us and small sensors added versus another big computer near our body?
Well, I think it's good to take a step back and think about not just your device in a vacuum, right? I mean, because it's going to be sitting with computing capability, maybe in your pocket with your phone, maybe with your tablet and your PC, maybe with, certainly with all the cloud services and servers that are out there. And even within your home, there's going to be more compute capability as we look at smart homes and home automation, where you're not going to want to have all that infrastructure tied up into the cloud, because if for some reason you lose your connection, your smart home becomes a dumb home, and that's not a great experience. So I think that there's, I don't think the smartphone is going away anytime soon, but I think that there is actually a lot to be said for distributing computing capability, because your phone's not always with you, your PC's not always with you. There are times when these devices are going to have to operate on their own, and the question is, what value do they bring on their own? If they're really just an extension of your phone, in some cases that may be enough, but in other cases, what you'll find is that the product doesn't have any value without that phone having a charge or being connected or whatever it is, and that can cause inconveniences in some cases and safety concerns in others.
It does seem that there is also this opportunity. It's true of the phone today. There's a very good chance, unless it's been stolen, that if I have the phone, are we getting the signal? I can't tell.
I think so.
Okay, so last question. If there's a pretty good chance if I have my phone, it's my phone and it can authenticate me.
Yep.
What is the potential of some of these wearables as security and authentication? I think we all know the password is horrible and broken. Can these solve that problem?
I think they can. There's actually a number of companies have come out with pretty clever ways to use biometric signals to do some authentication. The one nice thing, I talked about the wearables being persistent, which is, unlike your phone, which you can take out of your pocket and leave on a table, or you might leave in your bag, I keep my watch on pretty much all day long. And so as long as it's authenticated and on my wrist, then I have a pretty good digital authentication method that I can carry with me.
I think we're really getting the hook now because
All right,
they turned off our mic. Well, thank you very much, Steven. It's been a pleasure as always. If you enjoyed my moderating, I co-produce our Code Mobile conference that's coming up this October. If you don't like my moderating style, my colleague Liz Gaines co-produces our Code Mobile. It's October 27th and 28th in Half Moon Bay. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you, Ina.